One of the great anomalies of this pandemic is the medical evidence provided to Australians on decisions made around borders, around lockdowns, and of course around allowing people to go about their daily lives. In fact, the reality for most Australians is that it's a bona fide cover-up. Let me repeat that, a bona fide cover-up. The lack of medical evidence presented to the public is a national disgrace. For all we know, the chief medical officers, they could be getting their medical advice out of a packet of cornflakes. Now, we know that's not true. Of course that's not true. But what have they got to hide? Why are we being subjected to certain decisions, particularly in Queensland and WA, which are totally at odds with decisions being made in other states? Now, I'll give you an example. Here in Queensland, the Premier waited until last Friday to announce that people travelling from New Zealand to Queensland would not have to undergo the 14-day quarantine in a hotel at their own cost, of course. It's $3,000 every time you do that. Now, in New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT and the Northern Territory, they've been flying in from New Zealand since October 16, 43 days ago, nearly 2 months. Not so in Queensland. About 7,000 had come in on 88 flights into Sydney, and can you believe this? About 1,000 people had flown in on 22 flights to Victoria. Victoria, the basket case of the nation when it comes to coronavirus. But in Queensland, nothing. A big fat donut. So all those people wanting to get into Queensland, over the last 43 days, they couldn't fly directly. They could fly into Sydney, they could fly into Melbourne, and then, of course, who knows, they would make their way to Queensland. They could come up on a train, they could come up on a car, who knows. So what was the rationale behind that? And how could a decision be made to have people fly into Melbourne before Brisbane? Brisbane is one of the safest places in the world. Take the hat off to the Premier. She kept us safe. She got re-elected. Come down out of the trees, Premier, for goodness sake. But Victoria, second wave, 800 people dead, and they got the right to host New Zealand visitors 43 days before Queensland. Unbelievable. Yet we're told it's because of the medical advice. Well, in Australia, we're a nation that pride ourselves on transparency in government. Give us the advice. Tell us the advice. The Chief Medical Officer of the Commonwealth, Professor Paul Kelly, he said back in March the borders should not be closed under any circumstances at any stage. So, Premier Palaszczuk, the election's over. Come on down out of those trees, like the Japanese soldiers who stayed there for 40 years after World War II. This is tortuous for tourism operators and people wanting to see their loved ones. Just get on with it.